project. We thank you for your interest in our effort to restore this wonderful old house to its original grandeur and add a touch or two of our own.
The home was designed with a unique architectural style composed of alternating rows of 4-inch and 8-inch stone face blocks and roofed with imported French clay tile. The home was built in 1911 by Leavitt.
And he actually was a school teacher for some time in the Lincoln area and then bought a farm and began farming.
Leavitt died in 1916 while running for Lancaster County Treasurer. Over the years, numerous families have lived in the rather unique house.
Some aspects of the house are pretty common. The basic form of a big square house with a porch all across the front is a typical form. Often is called a prairie box or American foursquare. What's most unusual about this one, but two things, are the material, the concrete block at that early time, and that it was where it was located. The other houses that are like that one are all in the city, in this vicinity. And for that to be built as a farmhouse out east of town in the early 19-teens made it unusual, and that material of concrete block was a new material at that time.
Benjamin Davis bought the home in 1919 and raised his large family there until 1929. In May of that year, he sold the house and the farm to the U.S. government. They then built the Veterans Hospital, which still operates today. The current chief surgeon of the hospital lived in the Leavitt house until 1980. It has sat unused since that time.
Well, I've driven by this house for 30 years, I guess, ever since I've been in Lincoln, which is really the late 60s, and I noticed it then. You know, we just gradually saw it deteriorate. I was never close to it. I never drove up on the grounds or looked at it, but you'd see it gradually deteriorate, and you always wondered what was going to happen to this place.
In 2000, a breeze of hope began to blow for the abandoned house.
Through the grapevine, we heard that the owners might be willing to allow the house to be moved.
After some questioning, it was determined that it was physically possible for the house to be moved.
So we proceeded through the next number of months, which turned into a couple of years, to get permission from the Historical Society to allow the house to be moved. Took nearly a year to work with the current owners of the house and get under contract with them to be able to work with them so that they would help me with the move and encourage it and not demolish it in the meantime. And at that time I also started looking for land because I didn't have a place to put the home. So we spent nearly 2.5 years finding the proper location for it that would be suitable to the Historical Society, and also that we felt was a positive venue to display the house and also make it look like it was lived in and belonged in a new location. This being a very difficult thing to do with a house of that stature.
A sale price of $1 was agreed upon, and Bruce presented each of the partners a framed silver dollar to commemorate the transaction. The cost of the move, however, far surpassed the current value of the house. Another challenge was getting the house onto the rigging without having it crumble to pieces.
The biggest problem we had, the mortar joints on this house has virtually deteriorated to where the mortar, as opposed to holding the block together, it was only holding the block apart. The mortar had deteriorated to that degree. Well, the next thing that was a strike against us, all of the interior wall coverings upstairs and down had been removed. Had we any kind of wall coverings on those perimeter walls, that in itself would have contributed toward the shortfall that existed in the integrity of those block, which had deteriorated mortar.
It normally takes 1.5 days to get a house ready to move.
The movers spent 3.5 weeks preparing for this house, full time with a crew.
Finally, the big day had arrived. If only Mother Nature had cooperated.
We'd actually decided on January 24th and 5th, but we got a snowstorm.
Because of the snowstorm, the moving date had to be pushed back to February 1st and 2nd of 2003. During the week, the snow melted, but temperatures remained too cold for the hydraulic equipment to function properly. At the last moment, temperatures cooperated, rising into the 50s and allowing a dry and pleasant moving weekend.
I was standing on 70th Street, and they had slid it over, and it was just starting off the hill. I stood behind my husband because it's like watching a scary movie. Okay, I was scared to death. All I could see was that whole 3-story structure just piling into the dirt, you know, and this big rumble with the dust and everything just poofing up. So I stood behind my husband because I saw that those caterpillars and the big truck just inching along, and that house starting to move. And it was unbelievable that this could even be conceived of, let alone just it's starting to move. At that moment, I knew that it was a reality, and as it continued to move off that hill, I said, okay, we're in this.
Got $9 under there. The most exciting time for me was just when they actually moved the house down off the property onto the street. The angle was about as great as anything they would have, and you had this nagging fear that everything would just collapse. Once that was done, then the mover did a really professional job, and
Well, I think they
I
were
was
about cleared
amazed at how smooth it all worked.
that median.
mighty big job because they had the electric companies there, they had the cable companies helping. They were moving lights in order to get it through the intersections. They were going up and over the medias to turn corners, and it was a tremendous job and very well done. I was just amazed that that house got as far as it did without falling apart.
They've put some little animals in the windows of the house. There's a tiger sitting there, and there's Tweety Bird up in the upstairs window.
One thing, just to make it festive, Bruce took all of my stuffed animals from my nursing office and put them all in the windows of the house, just to, you know, when the kids would walk by and, you know, on the move day, they would be able to see the little animals perched in the windows, and he thought that was really cute. And it was really funny, but, you know, we have pictures of Pink Panther way up in the third floor up there in the window, and it was pretty cute. The festivities were all these people out watching the parade. I mean, again, thousands of people lining the streets, and they were, I mean, it was a beautiful February day. So the kids were out, you know, and in strollers, and moms and dads, and, you know, little ones with their perched on the shoulders of the parents, and just enjoying, you know, up and down the day. We decided that we were going to feed the crew, and so, you know, here comes this house at 1 mile an hour, and so we raced down kind of towards the end of the street as it had already made the turn. And so I set up a little card table, and I got my Sloppy Joe mix out, and the brownies and the chips and whatever else I had, and we were putting together Sloppy Joe sandwiches, and we fed the workers, we fed our crew. We, you know, it kind of seemed like the fish and the loaves, that it just kept multiplying. And even some people would come up and ask, now, how much do you charge for your Sloppy Joe sandwiches? And I said, well, they're not really for sale, you know, they're for the workers.
And number 4, the problem is of the 14 miles we moved, only about the first mile was flat. The rest of the entire moving route consisted of hills. And of course we checked the percentage of the grade before we ever moved, and every hill between here and 70th and Oak had a 22-inch change in the length of this house, which is 44 feet. And then 2 of the hills, as opposed to 22 inches, it changed by 32 inches in the length of the house, which we chose to not accept. We did not want to negotiate an upslope with one end of this house 32 inches higher than the other end. So consequently, every time we went down grade, we elevated the truck in, and as we went upgrade, we lowered, so that we would basically be negotiating up and down slopes in a perpendicular fashion as opposed to following the road grade. So by contributing all this extra work, adding steel to the job, I was very, very happy with the end result. And we just got here in pretty good shape. I'm very, very proud of how it turned out.
I thought it was pretty interesting to see a big house moving down the road. It's pretty cool to watch the whole thing.
Well, the weather turned miserable today. There's a couple inches of snow on the ground. And so it's going to be some time before they get that house up on the foundation, I'm sure.
After 2 full days of moving, the house was placed on a farmstead on South 148th Street. The property also features a native prairie, 40 acres of trees, hiking trails, and a 12-acre lake nearby.
The trees around the farmstead here, I think, are very old trees and make a very good shelter for the house.
The homestead is also home to a now refurbished 105-year-old barn that's been in a few families' notable history.
Well, I haven't been up there recently, but I was there right after they moved the large house up there. The garage is gone. The chicken coop is gone. There used to be an old ice house up north. The barn was falling down, but I understand that it is being remodeled and has a lot of work done on it. And the house is much different.